One of the most remarkable sightings of the 1967 UFO wave was that of JBW Angus Brooks, a former RAF intelligence officer and British Airways flight administration officer. While walking his dog on the morning of October 26th and taking a brief respite near Ringstead Bay, Dorset, Angus Brooks noticed an object which descended at lightning speed and then decelerated abruptly, leveling out to a point about a quarter of a mile from his position at roughly 200 to 300 feet altitude. In his own highly detailed report, Brooks described the shape of the craft prior to leveling out. A central circular chamber with a leading fuselage in the front, and 3 separate fuselages together at the rear. On slowing to a hover position, the 2 outer fuselages at the rear moved position to the sides of the craft to form 4 fuselages at equal distant position around the center chamber. There were no visible power units and no noise of applied power for reverse thrust, movement of fuselages, or for hovering. On attaining hover, the craft rotated 90 degrees clockwise and then remained motionless, unaffected by very strong wind. The object remained motionless for the next 22 minutes, while Brooks noted further details. The craft appeared to be constructed of a translucent material, and the central chamber was about 25 feet in diameter, and the fuselages, or appendages, about 75 feet in length, making the total length of 175 feet. At 11:47 a.m., he wrote, 2 of the fuselages moved around to line up with the central third fuselage, and the craft climbed with speed increasing, and then disappeared. The object was hovering equal distant between Winfreth Atomic Power Station and the U.S. Air Force Communication Unit at Ringstead Bay. Neither the USAF nor the Atomic Energy Authority were able to confirm any unusual activity at the time in question. One of Angus Brooks's dogs seemed very distraught throughout the encounter, frantically pawing at him and refusing to obey orders to sit, although she remained beside him. Brooks speculatively attributed this to very high-frequency sounds emanating from the object, which may have disturbed her, but on subsequent visits to the area, she also exhibited signs of nervousness. The other dog, a Dalmatian, was unaffected by the object and wandered off to hunt game. 6 weeks later, the 12-year-old dog died of cystis, a fact which may be quite coincidental. In February 1968, Angus Brooks was interviewed by a team from the Ministry of Defense, a scientist from the Royal Aircraft Establishment, and an RAF psychologist from the Ministry of Defense's S4 unit. In a lengthy letter to Mr. Brooks following their investigation, the team offered its opinion that what had really been seen was a vitreous floater, adding the possibility that Mr. Brooks fell asleep or entered a near-sleep state and dreamed the rest. Brooks was equally unimpressed with the Ministry of Defense's dream theory, and it is difficult to accept that the ministry actually believes in these fatuous theories either. In the small hours of November 6, 1967, on a section of road between Avon and Sopley, Hampshire, driver Carl Furlow found that the lights of his diesel truck had suddenly and unaccountably failed. As he pulled up, he observed a glowing 15-foot wide egg-shaped UFO, which moved slowly across the road from right to left, then accelerated and disappeared. The object made a sound like a refrigerator and gave off a smell like a drill boring through wood. Before the object disappeared, a car came from the opposite direction, a Jaguar, and its lights and engine stalled. Our vehicles were stationary 25 to 30 yards from each other, Farlow reported. The object was in between us. It glowed in the most beautiful green color I had ever seen. It was like nothing on earth. I sat in the cab, petrified. I don't want to ever experience anything like that again. This was no hallucination. The engine of the truck was unaffected by the encounter and remained ticking over, perhaps because it was diesel. After the object had gone, the driver of the car, a veterinary surgeon, suggested to Furlow that they phone the police from a nearby call box. The police arrived shortly afterward. Mr. Furlow was very frightened, said Constable Roy Ninham, who was in the patrol car. The most startling part of his report is that his lights failed and came on again when the object he saw disappeared. The witnesses noticed that there were marks on the ground beside the road, and that the road's surface appeared to have melted. The police took Furlow and the vet to the police station, where they were interviewed separately until 4:30 a.m. The vet's girl passenger was taken to the hospital suffering from shock. The following day, both men were taken to Christchurch Police Station and were interviewed by a man from the Ministry of Defense. Later that day, Furlow was driven back to the site by the police in order to collect his belongings from his truck, and noticed a group of people investigating the site with instruments, a bulldozer leveling the ground, and a man repainting the telephone booth. A week later, Furlow observed that a 200-foot stretch of the road had been completely resurfaced, as if to cover all traces of evidence. This detailed case is rich in unanswered questions. Much of it suggests a military device of some kind. But if so, the authorities have successfully kept it a secret for over 16 years. Whether man-made or extraterrestrial, the Avon UFO was clearly capable of exerting some very remarkable physical effects.